Hello everyone, my name is Robbie and this is Wonderframe. And in today's video I will be helping you out with a few tips and tricks about how to handle the 4 most common lighting conditions during the day. These will be harsh light, soft golden hour, cloudy overcast and blue hour light. Midday sun gets a bad reputation because it's not easy to shoot in and most of your images will not be good enough. There are 2 ways I like to go about shooting in harsh light. One of them is to search for a shaded place, but this is only working for planned shoots. So for example, when you know you will want to take like portraits and stuff, then yeah, this is a good idea. But when you're just trying to capture moments on the street, then bad luck, you can move the street to a shaded place. The second option is to search for shadows. Basically, you want to find like patterns or lines that are basically created by shadows, by the harsh light. Now, when you find these harsh shadows, you either incorporate the patterns into your composition, or when, for example, you can find those diagonal shadow lines, you can create really dramatic scenes by positioning your subject into the light section and then really darkening the dark sections. So I'm not saying that these are the only 2 ways to go about this, but these are my favorite ways to go about harsh light. And there are times when you will not have any other option and you will either need to postpone your photography and just enjoy your traveling, or you just accept that everything is lit from above and it can create really weird shadows. Another thing that you can do is just to put your camera into black and white mode and try out with more abstract compositions. As I already mentioned, you should stay in cities when there is harsh light. So if you can plan around golden hour in the morning and in the evening to go shoot landscapes or other stuff, and then in the middle of the day to travel around cities and then utilize these tips in the cities, that would be the best advice I can give you. The next section is probably most photographers' favorite time of the day, and that is golden hour, obviously. Golden hour is a really soft light, and you can find the soft light either at sunrise or at sunset. It usually takes about half an hour to an hour, and you can really create epic shots. And I know that there are a bunch of photographers who say that a golden hour is basically overrated and you should be able to create really nice compositions in overcast and more boring lighting conditions, but let's be honest, the most epic photos were created at golden hour. Not the most memorable, but one of the best photos. In this kind of lighting, you can point your camera towards any subject and the chances to get something really nice is really high. Even though this is probably the best time of the day to shoot in, there are 3 main ways of shooting with this kind of light. One is to shoot backlit, and it's kind of obvious, but when you think about it, you put your subject in front of the sun, so the sun is behind your subject and you are shooting directly towards the sun. This way you can get 2 different results. One is that your subject is totally blacked out, creating a really nice silhouette, or the second one is when either the sun is not that harsh or not that strong, even though it's obviously softer because it's golden hour, or it is not directly behind your subject, it's kind of to the side a bit. And that way you can get a really interesting rim light around your subject, and also your subject will be lit a bit more properly, so the exposure on your subject is a bit better, and thus you have more options when editing to bring out all the details you need. Another way to utilize this kind of light is basically to use the long shadows it can cast, and think about in a similar way with how you did with harsh lighting. So you can find like patterns and stuff, because these shadows are longer, you can really find leading lines and using that composition basically rule to lead your viewer's eyes towards your main subject. The third way I can think of using the golden light is basically to have it as the main source of your lighting on your subject. So you position yourself and your subject in a way that the light is casted on them or on the subject that you are photographing from behind you and a bit to the side. So basically you are using the sun like you would use a softbox. And this way you will still have shadows, although because the sun is not that harsh, the light is not that harsh, you will not have hard lines, and this will create really pleasing photos. It doesn't matter if your subject is a human being or a pet or something from a landscape or something from the streets. This next section is basically about cloudy and overcast days, and I will be right up front with you. I don't like cloudy days. I don't like the overcast lighting. I think it's boring, and I also don't really feel that good when there's a cloudy day. So even if it's a harsh midday sun, I still like that better than an overcast day. But that doesn't mean you can't utilize these kind of scenarios. And let's be honest, when traveling, there's a high chance that you will encounter overcast days. So you should know a few tips about this as well. The third thing is that almost every time this kind of light is the perfect light for normal portraits. So if you want to incorporate people in your travel photos with the desired location in the background, this is the best light to do so, because both your subjects, peoples, and also the secondary subjects, the location itself, will be properly exposed and nothing will be over or underexposed compared to the other parts of the image. But then if you're finished with photographing portraits, then after that comes the more difficult part, because there is no specific tip on how to position yourself or your subjects based on the light, because the light is even all around. So now you will need to find other composition elements that you can utilize, for example like leading lines or frames inside the frame, or trying out photographing from different heights. Try to photograph from above or from down below, and try out different stuff that you would otherwise not think about, because in the conditions when the light is really nice, then that's the main focal point. So now is the time to try out different composition techniques. The last thing that you can think about, but this will not apply for every situation, is basically the reason why it's overcast. And the reason why it's overcast, it can be that it rained or it will rain. And this brings about a bunch of other cool stuff with it. So for example, if it's overcast because it rained, you already have a bunch of new reflections because everything is wet. Or the colors themselves are a bit more punchier and saturated. So those are a few other things that you can utilize while you are outside on an overcast day. The last daytime lighting condition, almost nighttime, is blue hour, which you can encounter right after sunset or right before sunrise. And this time of the day is quite short, and you will need to be really quick and on time if your goal is to photograph during this blue hour time. Unfortunately, I can only think about two things that you can do during blue hour, and one of them is basically to find good location within a city where there are a bunch of lights that you know that will come up during this time, and utilize those lights to create interesting cityscapes. Otherwise, the only other thing that I can think of is basically creating portraits with these lights in the background, blurring them out and creating really nice backgrounds for your subjects. So here I think I will be asking your help, you that know any other good tips or tricks that somebody could use during blue hour, please feel free to comment down below. Maybe it will help somebody out next time when they are out in blue hour. In the last section of this video, I really wanted to talk about a few extra tips that are not directly related to composition based on the lighting. For example, in harsh light, when you are looking for those really harsh shadows, probably the easier way to go about it is to use a longer focal length. I'm not saying you need a 70-200, but try with at least a 50mm or an 85mm, because then you really can focus on the more abstract part of the composition and not include too much stuff, because in these conditions including too much stuff can really be distracting. Also, photos taken in these harsh lighting conditions are probably best edited with the main contrasty idea in mind. So what I mean by this is these conditions really are creating high contrast scenes, and when editing you should embrace this and darken the darker parts and brighten the brighter parts. For those who are using Fujifilm cameras and are using the film simulations, basically shooting in JPEG, I would really suggest trying out nostalgic negative and then adjusting the highlight and shadow settings for your liking. Another tip that can apply probably to all lighting conditions, maybe on overcast days not that much, is to use a black mist filter, because a black mist filter can really be used in everyday situations. This filter can really help you soften the light, mostly in harsh lighting conditions, but it can also soften even more the soft light of the golden hour, which can create more dreamy effect, and can also help you soften the lights in blue hour, where it will be creating these mystical scenes. Probably for everyday use I would try out 1/4 or a 1/8 strength. And last but not least, a really good advice in blue hour is to bring out your faster lens if you have one. At blue hour it's already decently dark, and if you try to use a kit lens you can get by hand holding it and going down with shutter speed if you have a steady hand, or just putting it on a tripod. But with this you enter motion blur, and I can really see that if that's what you want, then great, but if you want to freeze action, then the only options you have is to raise the ISO pretty high, which is not ideal, and then the other option is to have a faster lens with a brighter aperture. These were the tips I could think of for this video about various lighting conditions, and while on your travels you will certainly encounter these lighting conditions, and you should know a few tips about all of these scenarios so that when you are traveling you can not spend that much time thinking about what and how to shoot, but rather to enjoy the moment more. Because let's be honest, while traveling there are a bunch of things that get in the way, like there is not enough time in one place, or there are people waiting for you, or certain activities being postponed, and a bunch of stuff like that, which can make it harder for you in the end. Knowing about a few tips that I just shared in this video might help you out on your next travels, because you will be prepared for any condition with at least one good photo idea. I hope you like this video, and I hope you find it helpful. Thanks for watching, you know the jazz. Subscribe, comment, like, and see you in the next one.